guys, welcome to Keeping It Real. I'm Ryan, and today we're going to be talking about the Jack Ryan franchise created by Tom Clancy. 5 movies and 2 seasons of a television series titled Jack Ryan. The Hunt for Red October is the first of the Jack Ryan film series that was released in 1990. The film stars Alec Baldwin as Jack Ryan and also features Sean Connery as well as Sam Neill and James Earl Jones. This is the first Jack Ryan movie, along with the first book, which at the time of this recording I have not yet read. However, I have ordered it and it is sitting on my shelf. The Hunt for Red October is a solid thriller with not a lot of violence to speak of, but the intensity comes from the gravity of the situations that the characters find themselves in, and the possible implications to each and every action that they make. Sean Connery does a shit Russian accent, but nonetheless is actually memorable and good in this movie. Alec Baldwin is fine as Jack Ryan, although he doesn't actually get a lot of screen time. The other films, as well as the TV show, really put the Jack Ryan character in the forefront of the story, whereas this one, he's kind of just, this is just his introduction. He's more along for the ride. Sean Connery's character is really the main character. Overall, this movie is perfectly entertaining, and if you don't have a lot of distractions, the tension builds really well, so I'm going to give this movie a 90 out of 100.
The Hunt for Red October.
Patriot Games, released in 1992, is the second film of the Jack Ryan film franchise, and this time we are introduced to Harrison Ford as Jack Ryan. We also get Sean Bean, Samuel L. Jackson, and the return of James Earl Jones. Bringing the franchise from PG to R-rated territory, this venture offers up much more of an action adventure with some intense violent sequences and a couple of F-bombs. The R rating of this movie isn't exactly what I would call a hard R, in that if you just have a mature mindset, this movie could be a PG-13, a couple extra F-bombs, and a non-graphic shot of a sex act, take it to that R-rated territory, but it's really not that bad. This entry steps away from the thriller genre and into the action revenge story of a terrorist gone rogue, played by the doomed to die on-screen Sean Bean, who had been thwarted by Jack Ryan in London and seeks revenge against Ryan and his family, to include shooting at his family on the highway, and launching an all-out assault on the Ryan property in the middle of a dinner party with royal attendants. The espionage and politics still come into play, making this an above-average action movie. The actions of the characters have consequences that stretch the globe, and you can feel that in just about every scene. I give this movie a 92 out of 100.
Patriot Games.
Clear and Present Danger, released in 1994, is the third film of the Jack Ryan film franchise. This movie brings the return of Harrison Ford as Jack Ryan and also features Willem Dafoe and returning James Earl Jones. This was actually the first Jack Ryan movie I ever saw when I was a kid. It was the only one I wanted to watch that wasn't R-rated. For some reason, The Hunt for Red October slipped by me for many years like an undetectable Russian submarine, but the rest of these movies I was actually quite aware of. This movie is PG-13, so I was allowed to watch it as a kid, and it features some of the most excellent action sequences to this day, including a rooftop convoy ambush scene, which was just super, super cool. This scene is so interesting, it's regularly shown as training for private security teams and for urban combat training. Willem Dafoe is awesome in this movie. His screen time is limited, but it's hard to look away from him when he's on screen, when he plays this calm, cool, and collected asset. Super, super interesting. Between these scenes and the tense computer hacking battle, which is still intense to this day, even though technology has taken some leaps and bounds, make this my favorite of the Jack Ryan film franchise. I have nostalgia, but I also watched this movie recently, and it holds up. It holds up pretty well. Like, you know, dated technology a little bit, but like the intensity of the story still holds up. You can still put yourself there. So I'm going to give this movie a 95 out of 100.
Clear and Present Danger.
The Sum of All Fears, released in 2002, is the 4th film of the Jack Ryan film franchise. This movie stars Ben Affleck as Jack Ryan, features Morgan Freeman, James Cromwell, and Liev Schreiber. Liev Schreiber. 8 years have passed since the release of Clear and Present Danger, and we get a reboot with The Sum of All Fears. This time starring Ben Affleck in the titular role of Jack Ryan, and is accompanied by Morgan Freeman with James Cromwell playing the president, a character who has been featured before but who gets ample screen time in this update. The movie takes its geopolitical thriller source material and makes an attempt to follow that style. This movie is not absent of violence, however, there are not as many action set pieces or extended action sequences as the previous two installments. A tragic disaster is featured, and the build-up plus the aftermath of that event is truly what this film is about. There isn't exactly anything wrong with this film. It just doesn't feel as fun to watch as the others do, and this is due to the subject matter. I think for me, it was literally just like too dark too often. It features scenes that just generally have darkened textures and lighting, and I got a very dark vibe by this movie, which is probably the intent, so I can't exactly knock the film for it, but I didn't care for the choice personally. Due to the difficulty of watching this movie without feeling like sad, sleepy times are ahead, I'm still going to give this movie an 80 out of 100 because it's still a worthy entry into the Jack Ryan film franchise. It has a lot to offer. It's just dark.
The sum of all fears.
Jack Ryan, Shadow Recruit, released in 2014, is the fifth and final film so far of the Jack Ryan film franchise. This movie stars Chris Pine as Jack Ryan, Keira Knightley, Kevin Costner, and Kenneth Branagh. The film is also directed by Kenneth Branagh. The latest flashy update to the Jack Ryan film series gives us another reboot, and this time it is not based on a specific book in the Tom Clancy created Jack Ryan world. However, the character is used as well as a blend of events and elements, plus some completely original material that gives us this salad of a movie. It is really boring to watch, actually. It's a by-the-numbers spy film. It's too bright, almost as if they heard everyone saying what I said about the last movie being too dark. They were like, let's make this one like super, super bright. Like, it's not what I meant. I literally felt like I needed sunglasses during certain sequences of this movie. I wasn't saying we needed it this bright, I was just saying that we needed better color correction. The movie should have just been another action spy movie with a different character name. It really doesn't feel like a Jack Ryan movie. The movie itself isn't terrible. As a spy movie, it's an 80 out of 100, but because they pulled some loose Jack Ryan lore into it, it actually kind of makes it half-assed and takes the movie down a notch because it doesn't fit into the overall franchise. And so, overall, I would knock this movie down to about a 75 out of 100, making it the least interesting of the film series for me to watch. And actually, overall, it's the least interesting because I like the show. So overall, it's the least interesting of the Jack Ryan entries to me, personally. Let's talk about the show. Jack Ryan, Season 1 and 2 from 2018 to 2019 is the television series based off of the Jack Ryan character. This stars John Krasinski as Jack Ryan, features Wendell Pierce and John Hugenacker. Hugenacker. At the time of this recording, I've heard that Jack Ryan has been greenlit on Amazon Prime to return for a third season. However, at the time of this recording, I have only seen seasons 1 and 2, as that's only what has been released so far. So that's what we're going to be talking about today, seasons 1 and 2 of the Amazon Prime show, Jack Ryan. John Krasinski was a ballsy choice to cast as Jack Ryan. You know, it's Jim from The Office. Although, to be completely honest, it's not out of the blue. It's not random. Earlier in his career, he did the Michael Bay movie, 13 Hours, The Secret Soldiers of Benghazi. Whether or not you like the movie or not, John Krasinski is good in a serious role. He's got the beard, he's got the machine gun and everything. So, like, I'd already seen him in, like, an action war-style role. And then that same year that the first season of Jack Ryan came out, 2018, also gave us his directorial debut, A Quiet Place, where he also was the lead actor. And so John Krasinski already in my mind had been set up to be like a serious actor. So I was ready for it. I was okay. I was ready for this. And good job. The casting was right. And I'm glad that I was mentally prepared for it. But at the same time, John Krasinski is a good Jack Ryan. He is. He's a great Jack Ryan because he's supposed to be a fish out of water. He's supposed to be this guy who's in over his head and carrying a machine gun into a combat-like situation in a way. And even with the knowledge of knowing what his other roles were, I actually thought that it made this role better for him because he feels more like a fish out of water, which is the character. So it worked perfectly for me. This show is also an original story, not based on a specific Clancy novel, but the character in this version is much more grounded in the roots and mythology of the original character than some of the previous outings, like Shadow Recruit. I buy John Krasinski's portrayal as an analyst. I buy him as this action guy. I buy it. I like it. I think it's good. I'm excited for season 3. I think that this show is very addicting to watch. You can binge watch it, you can blow right through it. And I will admit, season 2 is not as good as the first. You'll probably hear other people say that too. It's not as good. It does things more by the numbers, but I thought it was still a worthy entry and it furthered John Krasinski's hold on this character. You may hear a lot of people say that season 2 is not as good as season 1, and although I do agree with that, it's still a very worthy entry into the series. So overall, I'm going to give the Jack Ryan show a 95 out of 100, and that little dip there is just for the simple fact that season 2 is not as good as season 1. They could have stepped it up. They didn't, but at least they didn't step back. They kind of just... Let's see where the story's going. I am curious. For right now, I'm solidly entertained, and I give it a 95 out of 100.
I'm just a man. I do what I can, don't put the blame on me.
This is different because I reviewed a franchise as opposed to an individual movie, and so I feel as though I have to give the overall franchise a grade as well. And so by averaging the numbers out of what I've already given these movies, I'm going to give the overall Jack Ryan franchise an 89 out of 100. An 89 out of 100 does it solid, I think, and I will update this score as I go through further Jack Ryan reviews as more material comes out. I am looking forward to reviewing more Jack Ryan material, and I'm also looking forward to season 3 of Jack Ryan when they do get around to releasing that featuring John Krasinski.